And we are live. Greetings, Otaku Faithful, and those joining on Beamly.com. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Game of Thrones episode review right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly. And as always, I bring you the latest in this week's Game of Thrones episode review. And this is my review of Season 4, Episode 7, entitled Mockingbird. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. Very solid episode. However, I don't have too many thoughts on the episode, and that's no negative reflection of it at all. It's just because most of the scenes in this week's episode more or less follow through with previous expectations. Things that I've expected to happen, things that I've speculated to happen, and given that we had the trial last week, you know, it sort of brought tensions high again. This is the point in time in the typically this is the point in time in the series where you want to kind of slow things down again to, you know, to slowly build up to the climax of the season. And this is episode 7, so you know, we have 3 episodes left this season, so yeah, this would be the right point to kind of slow things down so that they could build things up again. But overall, I mean, I generally liked all the scenes. And the one thing in particular I will point out that I noticed in this week's episode is this focus on these stories, these little tidbit stories that were shared between characters in multiple scenes. What with the dying man sharing his story with Arya and the Hound sharing his story with Arya, Oberyn sharing his with Tyrion, Melisandre sort of sharing this little tidbit of knowledge with Stannis' wife. Sansa trying to share her little story about Winterfell with Robin. I mean, there are multiple points in the episode where these little tidbits are shared, and I like that sort of focus because it gave some insight into the characters. It let us get inside their heads a little bit more, started showing little bits of their personality. It was more so the approach of the tell not show sort of thing. This wasn't an episode, and these weren't scenes that were focused heavily on action as it was just thoughts being shared between characters. So I kind of like that. But all in all, as I mentioned, not too many thoughts, and that's just because we're progressing where we should be. Everything that's going on is as expected. So it was good to see that follow through. Now, first off, I'm going to start off this discussion with a couple of scenes that I have the least amount of thoughts on. So the first one I'm going to mention is Jon's scene. And the reason why I have the least amount of thoughts on Jon's scene is just because it's more or less the same of what we've been getting all season long. You know, Jon made it back to Castle Black with his party, and their mission was successful, but that didn't change anything. You know, Jon is still warning those in charge of the vulnerabilities at Castle Black, and he's still being ignored. And I get a feeling that we're going to see that all the way up until the threat actually reaches their door, until Mance and his parties get to Castle Black. I think that's going to continue happening. And for better or worse, they're going to catch the Night's Watch with their pants down if they don't start preparing for this. Now, certainly, Alistair said that they were preparing, but Jon's not convinced. He's not sold on it. So I think more or less we're going to be seeing the same thing until the shit literally hits the fan. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is what we saw for the little preview. That seemed to be more of a preview for the last 3 episodes than it was a preview for the next episode. And the one thing I want to comment on is the fact how Tormund and his party have made it to Morristown, and they're moving in on Castle Black. And Jon mentioned in his scene, he said that they saw, the campfires from Mance's army not too far from Craster's Keep. So he said that they'll be within reach of the wall within a month or so. He said by the next full moon. So I'm actually more curious to see if Mance's plan will actually, if he can actually pull that off. You know, that you guys will remember from my previous reviews where I mentioned this sort of strategy that Mance has about attacking the wall from both sides. I wonder if he'll actually be able to pull that off, because it seems like his people are in position, and they seem to be meeting, you know, relatively at the same amount of time. You know, now granted, that's not to say that one party won't arrive first, which I think that's what Mance intended when he said he was going to, you know, light the biggest fire the North has ever seen, that's going to be the signal for the attack. But now that we have some sort of idea of where both of Mance's parties are, I'm very interested to see if they can actually pull off this raid, if they can successfully pull off the siege. That's what I'm more interested in seeing at this point. So yeah, so that's pretty much all I had to say about Jon's scene. Very minimal. And I guess the second scene I have the least amount of thoughts on would be Melisandre's scene with Stannis' wife. Like I said, I like that little tidbit, that little sharing of information that Melisandre gave his wife. But the thing that kind of caught me off guard was the fact that it seems like they're supposed to be meeting Stannis in Braavos, and I wasn't expecting that. Remember, the last scene we saw with Davos in last week's episode, when he met back up with his pirate pal, he said something about, you know, get your men together because we sell out, you know, we ship off at dawn. And so I was under the impression that they were going to be leaving Braavos, but now we're learning that Melisandre, Stannis' wife, and Stannis' daughter are supposed to be meeting them. Now, I don't know if they're supposed to be meeting them at Braavos or if they're supposed to be meeting them at a third-party location that has yet to be revealed to us in the series. But, that just kind of took me by surprise. And I wonder, what could they be planning to where Stannis wouldn't leave his family at home? I mean, of course, Melisandre would join Stannis no matter what he's doing, but to bring his family along too, yeah, now that makes me kind of curious. So, I mean, we'll have to just wait and see where that all is supposed to be leading. Now, that's going to bring me to the third scene I want to discuss, and I think that's going to go ahead and be the Arya Hound scene. Well, both of the Arya Hound scenes. Now, first off, I'm not surprised that, you know, this sort of meeting with this dying gentleman led to you know, a larger body count, if you will. I did sort of like the mercy kill that happened with the Hound. One of the few instances where I think it was an action that sort of implied more about the character rather than, you know, a dialogue where, you know, the Hound decided to mercy kill the old man. And I think that does say something about his character. I think, you know, the fact that the Hound didn't want him to suffer, you know, sort of get it over with sort of thing. I think that makes sense with you know, what's slowly being revealed about the Hound. You know, the fact that he isn't this ruthless, cold-blooded killer that everyone has been led to believe he is. Now, that's not to say that he's not a killer. He is very much a killer, but he's not just this thoughtless brute sort of thing. You know, he does have a mind of his own. He does have feelings under that, you know, harsh exterior, and he does seem to take other people into consideration every once in a blue moon. So I think that makes sense. But I will say the highlight clearly of those two scenes was, you know, the scene he had with Arya where he was telling him about, you know, about what happened to him when his brother, you know, cast his face into the fire and whatnot. And that scene I thought was paramount, because it established the mutual understanding that I think needed to take place between Arya and the Hound if they're going to continue traveling from here on out. You know what I mean? Because keep something in mind. Arya is still traveling with him almost willingly at this point, because we do see that she has her own horse. Clearly, she has a weapon with her. She could escape anytime she wanted to, I would think, because all she needed to do to solidify her escape, to guarantee it, is just to cast the Hound in a ring of fire, trap him in some fire, and ride away into the distance. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So we do know that she is sticking with him willingly. And I think that if that was going to continue, there needed to be some sort of mutual understanding to where we can at least see, okay, why it is she's doing what she's doing and whatnot. Yeah, of course, there's the whole thing about it's safer with him, and this, that, and the other. But remember, this is the episode that follows where the Hound, this is when the Hound learns that there is a bounty on his head. So that means that he's now a target. People will be coming after him. So it's not as safe as it once was. But, yeah, you could also argue the fact that, well, their odds are best if they stay together. That much is true too. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying about the scene being paramount, this mutual understanding that occurred, and it makes sense how the scene is written, how the dialogue is written. They didn't really go out. I don't think the writers went out of their way to make the Hound sympathetic, not in the same way that they did with Jaime. You know what I mean? Last season, I don't think that's what it was, because I don't think the Hound was trying to appeal to Arya's feelings, or sort of ask for some sort of sympathy or anything like. I don't think that had anything to do with it. He was just telling her the truth. When he was freaking out about using fire on the wound so he wouldn't get infected, he was just telling her the truth of what happened. The fact that there was a misunderstanding between him and his brother, and it didn't matter. His brother chucked his head in that damn fire, and then to make matters worse, and this was the thing that we didn't know about the situation, was that his father was the one who defended his brother and lied to everyone else about what really happened to him. And at that point, the Hound said something like, you think you're the only one who's alone. And at that point, I think that's when that mutual understanding took place, because at that point, Arya could see that he's a loner the same way she is, by circumstance. He didn't choose to be a loner. This shit happened to him, and he had no choice but to pick up the pieces and ride with it. He is a victim of circumstance. Now, and the result was that he chose not to remain that victim, and that's why he is the way he is. But he never asked to be a loner, just like Arya never asked to be a loner. She never asked to lose her family. She never asked to lose her friends. The shit just happened to her, and she's been forced to deal with it. Same thing has happened to him. And I also want to note that I think underneath that whole sort of loner by circumstance bit is this idea of an immediate outcast. The fact that the Hound's father would immediately take his brother's side, despite the fact that he was the aggressor in that altercation, seems to imply this sense that the Hound was outcast. He was overlooked. He was unfavored for something that was completely not his fault. And I think that's another thing that ties into Arya as well, because Arya was sort of an outcast of her family. Remember, she's the girl who didn't want to be a lady. She wanted to be a knight. That immediately made her stand out with the rest of her siblings, because they all sort of embodied, or they sort of played into whatever their societal role was supposed to be. She didn't. Hell, even Jon, what was expected of him. Now, granted, yes, Jon is still the main outcast of the Stark pack, of the Stark pups. But remember, in terms of him being a bastard, Jon still facilitated that societal role, with him deciding to, go off to the wall because he knew he had no place amongst the Starks. So there's that too. And I think when you take in consideration, once again, that circumstantial loner and that sort of immediate outcast into consideration, it would make sense at least why the Hound and Arya would at least sort of see eye to eye on that particular issue, on that particular front. They might not agree on anything else for the rest of the damn series, and I wouldn't expect them to, but they can at least come to some sort of acknowledgement on that front. All right, I actually had more to say about that than I thought I would. So, next thing I want to discuss in regards to this week's episode is Dany scenes. First off, wasn't surprised one bit that that she finally jumped Daario's bones. I wasn't surprised at that at all. That had to happen eventually. You know what I mean? He's had the hots for her since he's first been introduced. Dany hasn't taken a man since Drogo. I mean, look, she is a woman, ladies and gentlemen. She does have needs too. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that that would happen, especially when he's willing and able. You know what I mean? She was the only one denying him, so the second she gives in, it's going down. Nor am I surprised that that Daario sort of came to her with this hunger for battle, this need to, you know, be active, to get out and to fight, because that's his profession. And let's face it, he has no place. I mean, this was implied, but you know, he got his point across beautifully when in his conversation with Dany. You know, he says, "You chose here. You know, you chose to stay in Marine and to rule, but I'm a warrior. You know, that's not my bag. I need to be on the battlefield. I need to be on the war front. Let me go out to Yunkai and take it back for you." You know, that makes sense. He's not the type of dude to just stay cooped up in a castle. Nah, man. Give that man what he wants, you know. He's not going to have those abilities forever. So that made complete sense too, and it wasn't too surprising that he went ahead and did it. But for me, the reason why I loved Dany's scenes in this week's episode was because that second scene, I finally got the conversation I had been asking for all season long. You guys know what I'm talking about. What did I say 2 weeks ago in my episode 5 review about how Dany needed to have that exchange with one of her advisors? There needed to be that exchange, that argument, that disagreement about what she wanted to do and the cause and effect, the repercussions of her actions, the consequences that would unfold thereafter. This, that, and the other. And then it would result in her taking the correct course of action and acknowledging the fact that she was wrong, the advisor was right, and she appreciated the wisdom that person shared with her. We finally got it with her and Jorah this fucking week, and it was cemented when she had that line, that last line of that scene, where she said, "Go and tell Daario that I changed my mind. I changed my mind. On second thought, tell him you changed my mind." Finally, Dany is starting to compromise. Finally, she is starting to be a reasonable ruler. I'm mad it took this fucking long to bring that about. Finally. Also, remember what I said about the way in which that conversation had to take place. Remember, who's the one that decides to send the nobleman from last week's episode to Yunkai as an ambassador? It's not Jorah, it's Dany. She was the one who brought that up. She was the one who came up with that idea and suggested it to Jorah, and he agreed with it. That's how that conversation needed to work. She wants to take a course of action. He disagrees. There's an exchange going back and forth, a banter about the consequences and repercussions. She comes up with a better idea. He agrees to it, and she acknowledges his advice. That's how it had to work, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm finally fucking glad it happened. Now, I will say this, though. I will say this. Now, I have no idea what's supposed to happen with Dany's story. Now that we know what her plan is in terms of dealing with what's been going on in Yunkai, granted, Estapor still hasn't been that still hasn't been figured out exactly how they're going to deal with that. Probably in the same manner as Yunkai, but now that she's decided to send someone else to act in her stead, I don't know where her story arc is supposed to go after this. I don't know what the what's the next objective. You know, we have no idea how long it's going to be to sort of re-solidify her rule in Estapor and in Yunkai, and as long as she's staying in Marine, I mean, you know, it's going to be all hunky-dory, I suppose, but there really is no way to gauge, you know, what the next objective is going to be, especially if she's hesitant to do so in fear that what happened in Estapor and Yunkai could then happen in Marine also. You know, the fact that she might not want to take that risk, which would then, that would create that hesitancy, that reluctancy for her to want to leave and conquest elsewhere. So, and then I don't think there was a scene of hers in the preview for the rest of the season. So, yeah, I don't know what to expect from here on out, from this point. I guess only time will tell. Now, that's going to bring me to the events in King's Landing, which pretty much, I think, all surrounded Tyrion. You know, because Tyrion had, pretty much, this was the episode where Tyrion's searching for, you know, his champion for the trial by combat. So first we had, you know, we opened up with the scene with Jaime. That was the no-brainer because Jaime was the one who he wanted to defend him in the trial by combat in season 1. And it was also a no-brainer that Jaime wouldn't do so. I like, though, how Jaime's reasoning is more about his ability and less about his the family ties. You know, it's Tyrion that keeps harboring on the family ties, the family responsibilities, his place in their family, Jaime's role in their family, his significance to Tywin, the sort of conflict, the conflict of interest, the compromising position that Jaime would be in with Cersei. Tyrion's the one that harbors on that. Jaime just tells him straight up, look, dude, I'm no good to you. You know, you choosing me is almost as bad as a decision as you choosing the trial by combat to begin with. So I like that. I also liked how Jaime was angry at Tyrion for not taking the deal. You know what I mean? Because let's face it, Jaime stuck his neck out for Tyrion. And now, granted, remember though, Tyrion's declining that offer, that does alleviate Jaime from his responsibility, but at the same time, once again, it puts Jaime in that compromising position because now his brother might still be killed, whereas that deal would have saved his life, and Jaime was willing to take that risk. So I like how Jaime was mad about that, and I also like how he threw the pride thing back at Tyrion. It was like, you're supposed to be a realist. I never thought you would succumb to pride. And once again, what did I say about why Tyrion turned down the offer? Why Tyrion turned down the offer last week? had nothing to do with the fact that no, he was innocent and that was the most important thing to him above all. No, it had nothing to do with that. It was all about sticking it to Tywin. And that's exactly what Tyrion said. It was like, could you imagine that face, you know? Yeah, man. Fucking Tywin was so butthurt, he didn't even show up in this episode. That man's still licking his fucking wounds. Man. Awesome. Which then, that brings Tyrion to his you know, the reunion with Bronn. First time he's seen Bronn since the Purple Wedding. And I gotta tell you, this makes me more and more suspicious about Bronn. You know, the fact that he's set up to you know, to marry this lady, and he's going to become somewhat of a nobleman, with what's been, you know, now, and what's been lined up and everything. That makes me immediately suspicious, because remember, the whole thing, the whole time in that conversation, they kept talking about how Cersei's the one who set that up, and how, you know, Bronn's pretty much sort of, you know, he's not really trying to get into the middle of things because of, you know, this new position he's found himself in and things of that nature. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I think that was Bronn's reward for sort of turning shade over to Tywin. I think that's what really happened. Because remember what happened before the Purple Wedding. Tywin ordered to have Shay brought to his quarters. He did that at the breakfast. And I believe it was at the beginning of the Purple Wedding. Well, prior to the Purple Wedding, Tyrion told Bronn that, you know, he appointed him with the duty of getting Shay out of King's Landing. And then it was at the beginning of the Purple Wedding where he was, you know, checking up on that. You know, did you see her get on the ship? Is she gone? And Bronn told her, look, man, it's over. Don't worry about it. She's gone. And we found out that was a lie. Shay is still in King's Landing because she testified against Tyrion at the trial. So what I'm thinking really went down, and you all will remember because I called this, shit, I think I might have called this in my episode 2 review, when I thought that Shay would have gotten killed, that Bronn would have turned her over and Tywin would have killed her. But now I think that Bronn just he just literally handed her over to Tywin, and you know what, this new setup, that was his reward for doing so. I don't think Cersei had a damn thing to do with it, or if she did, once again, it was at Tywin's behest. But I think Tywin was the major one who did this, because remember, who has the most gold in the city? Tywin does. And what will Bronn do damn near anything for? Gold. So it kind of makes sense. So yeah, but then again, you know, the funny thing with Bronn is he said the same thing. You know, his reasoning was sort of the same thing to Tyrion when he was talking about going up against the mountain. You know, the fact that the mountain's extremely big, extremely strong. But the funny thing is though, and this is why Bronn's reasoning for turning down Tyrion really fucking sold me. I think that was the thing that sold him. When he said the line that he's extremely fast for what you would think for a guy of his size. Remember what happened in season 2, episode 9, Blackwater, when Bronn had his exchange with the Hound? What did he say about the Hound being so big? He was like, yeah, you're bigger than me, but you're slower than me. I'm faster than you. I can take you. So for him to say the contrary about the Mountain, the fact that despite his size, he's still pretty fucking fast, that was that convincing comment. That was that convincing argument where it's like, yeah, Bronn has a solid case. He has a solid point. And it worked within the course of the episode because it just built on to that added tension, you know, those stakes. It just really sort of cemented how much of a threat, how deadly of an adversary the Mountain really is. And then lo and behold, we end the King's Landing scenes with Oberyn sharing his little story with Tyrion, touching story. And I mean that was a touching scene to see Tyrion sort of you know, be moved to tears um, in response to what Oberyn had told him and what he thought of Tyrion when he first met him. You know, when Tyrion was an infant. Um, and you know, I thought that was a really great scene. I thought it was written fantastic. And I mean, if you want to talk about a dramatic flair, if you want to talk about hitting some emotional cues, sort of, you know, just getting in here, you know what I mean? Just hearing that story, seeing Tyrion's reaction, and then finally, you know, Oberyn grabbing that torch and pretty much declaring himself Tyrion's champion. I thought all of that worked to great effect in the scene. But once again, it wasn't surprising. You know, I called it in last week's episode. We talked about it at length in last week's Small Council, where we knew that the trial by combat would come down to Oberyn in the mountain. Why? Because it was in the trailer. The scene was in the trailer, the very first trailer, I believe, for this season. So, and the fact that, remember, that the fact that that hadn't happened prior to the trial, to have the trial end with Tyrion, you know, demanding a trial by combat immediately, there was enough to deduce that that's what it would be. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I think from the looks of it, it seems like they're going to make that like a big deal. It seems like this is supposed to be sort of this, you know, it's kind of funny too, because, you know, originally when we had the episode where pretty much Tywin had agreed to sort of set up this meeting between Oberyn and the Mountain, I thought it was going to be, you know, just another clash, you know, sort of this, you know, this payback, this revenge bit. But now that this is the trial of combat, now that these two fighters have pretty much chosen their team, and you know everything that they represent, what they're fighting for, the fact that this has now become more of a personal vendetta, settling a personal grudge, it grandens the scale now. You know, now it's a big deal. And I mean, even from the tidbit we saw in the preview and the clip we got in the trailer, man, I mean, just looking at the set, you know, it's like these guys are fighting in the ring. They got a full stack audience and everything. It looks like it's going to turn out to be a big deal, which is what I didn't expect it to be at season's beginning, you know. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I wonder if this is supposed to be the big episode 9 event. You and any of you all who caught last week's Small Council, you remember that I posed that question to my co-host, because remember, every season episode 9 has, you know, that big event, you know, that's the climax of the season. I wonder if this is supposed to be it, or if it's going to be Mance's siege of the Wall, or it might even be both. I don't know. But once again, you know, I just never thought they would take this fight to that level. I wonder, though, I will say this. I want to pose this question to any of my book readers in the comments. Feel free to share your thoughts on this right now. Was this illustrated as this much of a big deal in the books? Like, I mean, was it the sort of thing that like got its own chapter, where there was like this huge build up to it, you know? Because if not, then that's a very interesting sort of creative change that they made, you know. But I think I spent enough time talking about that. But yeah, definitely highly anticipated. I would probably say at this point, definitely the most and the biggest thing I'm looking forward to in the last 3 episodes is this big matchup. I'll probably even take bets. And so that's going to bring my review to the final topic I want to talk about. And that's what we saw in the Eyrie this week. What happened with Sansa, Robin, Littlefinger, and then Lysa. Now, first off, I will say that if any scene was weak in this week's episode, it was the one between Sansa and Robin. And the reason why I say it was relatively weak was because it felt out of place in terms of Sansa. Sansa is much older than Robin, and it just felt very weird to see, and also, of course, the actress is much older than Robin's actor. So it felt very weird to see Sansa sort of bicker with her little cousin like that. You know what I mean? Especially since in the past, Sansa's been she's been characterized as pretty much the sarcastic, nonchalant, don't give a shit, cynical little teenage brat. For her to get all up in arms just because Robin knocked over her little snow castle of Winterfell, that just seemed really out of place. And once again, it created another. It made Sansa very unlikable. It didn't come across as, oh, can't you? You know, it didn't come across as, oh, Robin, how inconsiderate and unthoughtful could you be to knock over your cousin's snow castle? Do you not see that she's in pain? Do you not see that troubled her and it worried her? It didn't come across like that. It came across as, this is Sansa throwing another bitch fit over something that clearly is not that big of a fucking deal. It's a goddamn snow castle. Build a fucking another one. You're the older of the two. You're supposed to be an adult about this. When my younger siblings, because I have a younger sister and I have a multitude of younger cousins. When they pester me, I tell them to go fuck themselves and I go about my business. I don't stand there for minutes at end going into this rant about why it is they ticked me off. I tell them why they ticked me off, I tell them to go fuck themselves, and then I go about my business, or I just ignore them altogether. Why? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. It's only when shit matters that I get all hellfire and fucking brimstone on their ass. For Sansa to react like that, Robin acted exactly how I expected him to act. And the second we saw him enter that fucking scene with her with that fucking snow castle, I knew he was going to fuck it up. I knew that was going to fucking happen. He kept well within character. Sansa is like, it's a fucking snow castle. Get over it. Which then led to one of the creepiest fucking scenes. Ugh. Fucking cringeworthy. When Littlefinger kissed Sansa after he just told her, in a world where things would have been different, you might have been my daughter, and then he kisses Sansa. Ugh. That man is old enough to be your father. Ugh. That's some Walder Frey Craster shit right there. Ugh. That was fucking creepy, dude. Ugh. I'm curious. I'm very curious. I wonder what the thoughts on set were when they had to shoot that damn scene. I might end up buying this season's box set just so I could hear commentary on this fucking scene. I want to know what the hell, when Sophie Turner, read the script for that episode and she's like, I gotta do what now? And they're like, you gotta kiss Aiden. Yeah, full mouth. You gotta do it. Prolonged too. It can't just be a peck. You gotta do it. Okay, if it's in the script, and on the other hand, Aiden's in his trailer like, I get to kiss Sophie? Fucking right, let's do this. Where's my makeup? Let's go. Come on. Showtime, people. Showtime. Time is money. We ain't got all day. Let's do this. Yeah, but I really want to hear what the thoughts on set were that fucking day. Jesus. Ugh. a man's old enough to be your father, man. Ugh. So anyway, so then finally that's going to bring me to the Liza's departure in that scene. First off, I want to go ahead and I want to go on record. This was another one of the plot elements. This was another event in the story that I found out at the end of last season was going to occur. Well, actually, here's the funny thing though. When my pal started filling me in on some of the things that were going to occur later on in the story, I actually guessed this one on my own. When he told me that Littlefinger was going to become Lord of the Vale, I was like, he's going to kill Liza. He's going to kill her. There's absolutely no way he would marry her and live in the Eyrie with her. No fucking way. He's going to kill her. And I even remember speculating in season 3, I believe it was, when we found out that Littlefinger was going to be headed to the Eyrie. I was like, yeah, he's going to kill Liza. So yeah, I actually guessed that one on my own. But the thing is, you know, once again, this is another one of these events that, you know, I found out about at the end of last season, but I don't know how they occur. I don't know the events leading up to them. I did not think that Liza was going to, like, literally go ape shit and try to kill Sansa. I didn't think that was going to happen. But then again, like I said, Littlefinger's decision to kill her, this is my thing. If it wasn't for her trying to kill Sansa, I think he would have still done it anyway. Why? Because she was a liability. Look what she did in that scene with Sansa. She pretty much spilled the beans about, you know, what she did for Littlefinger in mixed company. You know, we saw, what was it, 2 episodes ago, when, you know, we got the reveal about what her involvement in Littlefinger's Grandmaster scheme was. We got that in that episode, but Littlefinger told her, it's like, hey, you know, the second you say these things, they become real. The deed's already done. Let's not talk about this. She goes ahead and she brings it up again in mixed company with Sansa being right there. How is Sansa not supposed to start asking questions after this? So I think even if it wasn't for her hostility towards Sansa, Littlefinger still would have gotten rid of her because she's a fucking liability. And you know what? Robin's next. You want to know why? Because he's still heir to the Vale. Littlefinger needs to go ahead and cut that tie. He needs to, you know, get rid of that to solidify his rule there. Yeah. So, ooh, I still can't get over that fucking kiss though. And you know what? I wonder what all is behind that. Is it just because, you know, it's a whole thing about consolidating power and, you know, political maneuvers? Or is it really this twisted sort of fantasy fulfillment bit going on with Littlefinger? You know, the fact that he couldn't have the mother, so he takes the daughter? That's really sick and twisted. Final note, though, on the Eyrie scenes, I like the fact how Littlefinger told Sansa that his reasoning for killing Joffrey was because of what happened to Catelyn. I like that. My thing is, though, I'm not convinced. I think that he might have done that anyway. I think he might have ended up doing that anyway. If anything, I think that the Red Wedding just expedited that plan. You know, made him, like, that was the final nail in the coffin. Like, yeah, let me go ahead and let me take care of this. So, that's pretty much going to wrap up this week's episode review. I want to go ahead and thank you all for joining me again this week, and in the comments below, let me know what you guys think, both on this week's episode, and let me know what you guys expect from next week's episode. Well, no, actually, in 2 weeks' episode, because Game of Thrones is taking a break next week. And so will I. Seeing as how pretty much the channel is Game of Thrones oriented right now, and seeing as how I've pretty much been uploading like a madman since, I think, what, Vikings season 2? No. No, actually, I've been fucking uploading every week. I think since Black Sails premiered. You know, ever since I came back from my hiatus, I've been at it every week. So yeah, I'm long overdue for a break. So seeing as how Game of Thrones is going on break next week, so will I. But don't fret, there will still be videos out later this week. I have tomorrow. You'll be getting the character spotlight video for last week, for week 6. That'll actually be up tomorrow. The character will be revealed when the video is released, and the voting on the OAW Facebook page has already come to a close. I already gathered up the votes and tallied them up, and you know, the winner's already been decided. So, but for those of you all who have yet to follow me on Beamly.com or to join the Game of Thrones TV room on Beamly.com, that link will be in the description box as soon as I finish this live stream. I just realized I didn't put it in there beforehand. That's actually going to be in there. You guys need to go ahead and you guys need to join up, because the Spotlight Sweepstakes is going to move to Beamly.com this week, with the third and final week in the Spotlight Sweepstakes. This is going to be for members of the Beamly.com Game of Thrones TV room. So if you aren't a member by now, you must be one in order to be considered for the Spotlight Sweepstakes. You must be one in order to be considered for that. And so week 6 Spotlight video is going up tomorrow. And then at the end of the week, that's when you'll be getting episode 7 Small Council discussion, and you'll be getting the Spotlight Sweepstakes, the Spotlight video for week 7. And then starting Sunday is when I'll take my break for the week. So with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off, and until next time, peace.